I'm a designer. So what does that actually mean? It's a term that can cover all manner of sins. Mostly when I tell people I'm a designer, the first thing they'll say to me is, oh, fashion. And then I'll say, no. And then, oh, I've got it, graphic designer. And then I have to tell them no again. When I tell them that I'm an industrial designer, I usually have to explain to them that I don't design these things. So if I'm not designing factories, what am I designing? Industrial design is taking the everyday problems in our lives and taking them and improving the quality of our life. I came across a great quote which explained this. They said, architects design buildings, such as this. Industrial designers design everything else. So that's what I do. And industrial design has a really great capacity to promote behaviour change, so improving the way we interact with the world around us. I personally design because I believe the worst thing that someone can say is, but that's the way we've always done it. Of course, it's really easy to fall into this and to carry on doing the things we've been doing because they're so busy. You've got your project deadlines to think about, your career, you've got birthdays to remember, your car to get fixed, a dentist appointment to find at a reasonable time, and that's before you've even decided what you're going to have for dinner that night. Things are easier when we don't have to overconsider the small details in our life, such as reading cooking instructions or checking the expiry date on our food. But it is exactly when these tiny details become a huge problem, and a monumental one at that. Who here throws away their food as soon as their date expires? It's quite a lot of you. That's not surprising because 87% of you do exactly this, and you throw away your food without even performing any of your own self-checks on your food, such as sniffing it and doing that kind of thing. And you join quite a lot of people because that's what we're being told to do. Expiry dates were put on our food in the 70s, and they haven't changed a lot since then. They're just slapped on and they're not being regulated. So while they were a good thing, they've caused a really huge problem, which is food waste. Did you know that half of the food the world produces is wasted? It's half. That is ridiculous, isn't it? And the crazy thing is a lot of that could have been avoided because we're throwing away things that are still perfectly fine. And that's like a whole family cooking meals all week and then just taking 6 of them and just throwing them straight in the bin. So as I said, we have to have these expiry labels, and they've been in the law since the 70s, but the way they're calculated is not regulated in any way. So these companies can put whatever date they want on them as long as there's one there. So it's not in their interest to have one really close to the actual expiry date. They're going to make a lot more people happier if they put it way ahead of time. So then there's no risk for people getting ill. But this is exactly why we're wasting so much. So it's not just food that we're wasting right now. Let's just consider the last thing you threw away. So let's say it was a carton of milk that you forgot about it. Land had to be cleared, cows had to be fed and watered and nurtured. We had to power milking and bottling machines, and then we used all this petrol to get this milk to the supermarket, where again we had to power fridges to keep it fresh, and then hopefully in the fridge that you kept at home, that had to be powered as well, until all of these efforts and energies were completely wasted when you threw that milk away. Now, most of that milk was probably quite disgusting and you were right to get rid of it. But I'm talking about wasting milk that was still completely fine just because an overcautious label told you so. And why wouldn't you? That's exactly what you're being told to do at the moment, just to throw things away according to the date. And the problem with this is, as I said, it's not being regulated, so you're not following accurate information, and some of that information is actually quite confusing. For example, one of my best friends at university, she was so scared of eating things that had passed their best. She even started throwing away tea bags when they passed their date. Well, luckily for me, I didn't have to do much tea shopping after that. What I'm saying is, we can't carry on like this. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Something's got to change. And we need to change our behaviour based on better, more intuitive and accurate information. And I truly believe that design is one of the best ways of doing this. I actually started thinking about food waste in the most unlikely way. I spent 6 months previously working for a design consultancy, and we worked on a project for Guide Dogs for the Blind Association for half a year. And during that time, we were exploring the issues that blind people have with public transport. And I was involved with hundreds of hours of interviews, travel observations, and workshops. So by the end of those 6 months, I was thinking about blind people quite a lot. Until one day, I was on my train home, and a thought occurred to me. How do blind people know when their food goes off? They can't see the expiry dates after all. So I was so intrigued by that question, I knew I had to do my final dissertation project for my design degree about it. When I first started considering this question, I knew that my solution couldn't just be a solution just for blind people, because it needed to add a value to other people as well, the sighted population. Because the sad reality of business is, if it doesn't help everybody, it probably won't be implemented. So then I considered my original question. How do blind people know when their food expires? And then I thought, well, how do any of us know when their food expires? We don't really. We're just following these weird date things that are put on our packaging and just throwing things away. And it was important that when I was designing this, of course, it had to be for the blind population also. And I wanted to create a solution that would make this information more intuitive and accessible for everybody and reduce food waste at the same time. And actually, there is a way. So I started thinking about all the ways we can learn about the expiry of our food, and for me, accuracy was key. I wanted real-time information to update itself, because the only way that we can waste less food is that if we're told exactly when that food expires, so we're not throwing things away a minute before that. So because this had to be accessible for blind people, my two realistic options were using touch or sound. So one of the early things I was looking into was using these electronic tags, which are able to track temperature changes and then update the information. So when you hold your smartphone up to it, it reads out loud the updated expiry date. And the cool thing was I actually got it to work. My supervisor was thrilled. So that basically meant that I had my project sorted, right? But I didn't want to get smartphones involved. For one, not everyone has one. And two, it overcomplicates things, and for something that I felt should be completely simple and intuitive to use. So I quickly got rid of that idea, but mostly because I was becoming obsessed with another crazy idea I had going on in the background. I absolutely loved the idea of having packaging change its texture to let you know when it had expired. I mean, we're used to seeing that in our everyday lives after all. Fruit goes soft, dairy goes lumpy, meat starts growing new things. So we're used to seeing these changes and smelling them, and we're familiar with them. So why on earth can't packaging do the same thing? All I needed to do now was to find a material that would act in this way. Easy, right? So it was definitely easier said than done. So I started speaking to all the great minds I could find around me at my university, telling them one by one about this really exciting idea. And they all listened, and they smiled, and they nodded, and at the end, all of them told me one by one that it was a nice idea. But that was it. So I had to carry on. So many people told me to just choose another idea and to pick something different, but I was too completely obsessed with this idea, so I just carried on talking to people. Until one day, I was talking to this chemistry scientist about my idea, and I was telling him the way I was telling everyone else, but this time was different. He paused, and then he said to me, "Why don't you use jelly?" It sounded completely ridiculous. But it actually makes a lot of sense, because jelly is a completely natural substance, and it reacts to the same things as food does, so it decays at the same rate. In theory, this was great, so this could have potentially been the material I was looking for. So then I started learning everything I could about this material, learning its chemical structures, everything else to do with it, and luckily I was living with a biomedical scientist at the time, so I probably annoyed the hell out of her, but she definitely helped me learn as much as I can about this. So while my other design friends were in the workshops prototyping their products made out of wood, plastic, and metal, I was actually in my kitchen playing with jelly, building what I called biomechanisms at the time, and trying to see how I can use this material to change and adapt the way I wanted it to. And one by one, every prototype that I tried completely failed, every single time. And for some reason, it failed in completely different ways every single time, so I couldn't even track what was going on, and I probably had some kind of bad karma with the jelly gods to deal with or something. But in the end, after trying and trying again and learning more and more about this material, I finally made a prototype that worked. Fluke, right? But then I tried it again and again and again, and it worked every single time with different kinds of foods. So today it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Bump Mark. It is a natural expiry date label, so it reacts to the natural environment around it, just like food does. It's really easy to use. All you have to do is run your finger across it, and if it's smooth, it means that food is fresh and you can use it. And if it's bumpy, it means don't eat that, throw it in the bin. The way it works is, so that's the smooth label on top, so that's the way it looks. And then when it expires, you can't really see there, but afterwards I'll show you a prototype and you can feel it for yourself. You can feel the bumps underneath. So how does it work? What I did to that gelatin is that I set a layer of it over a plastic textured surface. And because, as we all know, jelly sets solid at first, when you run your finger across it, it acts as a barrier and you can't actually feel those bumps underneath. And this label is attached at manufacture, so it's following your food around and it's doing everything your food's doing, such as heating up or cooling down, whatever is happening. And as it expires, gelatin releases its bonds and it turns back into a liquid. So then when you run your finger across the top, you can feel the bumps underneath. So that's how it works. And this is far more accurate than a printed date. A printed date is printed on and it can never change, no matter what on earth you do to that package, such as put under a hairdryer or whatever. But this is going to actually know how you're treating your food and let you know that what happens to it. And it works both ways. So on one hand, if you do all your shopping and you take it home straight away and you put it in the best fridge you could find on the market, and there's no reason why you shouldn't eat that food for a lot longer, and that label is going to reflect that. So well done, you've saved yourself some food waste and quite a lot of money. On the other hand, if you've done your shopping on a hot day and you've forgotten about it in the car for a bit too long, that label is going to start expiring down and revealing the bumps so much quicker. And it's going to let you know, don't eat this, and you've saved yourself a couple of days chained to the toilet. So for all you paranoid people out there who are throwing away these things, this is actually your friend. This can actually help you avoid all the fears that you don't know what's happening to the food at the moment, but this would actually help you know. But different foods expire at different times. I can almost hear you think, and yes, it does, you're right. But gelatin is such an amazing material that simply by altering the concentration of it, you can adapt it and match it to different foods. So the higher the concentration, such as this brown jelly at the top, it's going to last a lot longer because there's a lot more bonds in the structure. So it's going to take longer to break down. So it's better for things like cheeses, which we all know last a lot longer. And then you can dial it down for things like milk. So this paler consistency at the bottom, it's going to be a lot of a weaker gel. So it's going to go off quicker, just like milk does, as we learned earlier. We're currently getting this ready for market, which is really exciting. We've already run a retail trial with Asda at their supermarkets, so that went fantastically well. So soon we're going to be heading to the food lab to get this developed and ready for the market. So you could actually be seeing something like this on your packaging really, really, really soon. And the good thing about bump mark is that I'm not proposing just a small change that's not going to be noticed by anyone. I'm proposing a system overhaul that's going to really make people take notice and really assess their behaviour and hopefully be throwing away less food. So what do I want you to take away from this? Hopefully today I've shown you how a small, seemingly insignificant detail, when it's done by when it influences a lot of people to behave in a negative way, can cause enormous, enormous problems. So I challenge you to try and notice those insignificant details in the world around you, and more importantly, to actually chase those crazy ideas that you think might actually solve them. Thank you.